Approximately 70,000 years ago, two human species met on the map of an ancient Earth. This was not an encounter between cultures, but between evolutionary lines. One was Homo sapiens, migrants from Africa, equipped with language, tools, and a radically different way of life. The other was Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals, an indigenous species that had already adapted to the harsh climates of Europe and Western Asia for hundreds of thousands of years. The arrival of Homo sapiens was not met with welcome. There were no treaties, no negotiations. They stepped into unfamiliar territory and came face to face with those who already called it home. The land was cold, rugged, and wild, but it was already claimed. The two species differed not only in appearance, but in worldview. For Homo sapiens, the unfamiliar often signified danger. For Neanderthals, intruders were threats to resources and survival. Each side viewed the other with suspicion. Coexistence was unlikely. Across human history, conflict has rarely required complex reasons. Territory, food, and security have driven violence since long before the invention of words. In this prehistoric context, the encounter between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals may have marked the earliest large-scale interspecies conflict. A war not for glory, not for conquest, but for existence. The stakes were absolute. Two species occupying similar ecological niches, relying on the same prey, shelter, and resources could not both expand. One would adapt, spread, and dominate. The other would retreat, diminish, and eventually vanish. The archaeological record provides no detailed chronicle of battles or alliances, but the silence in the soil tells its own story. Over time, Neanderthal populations shrank and Homo sapiens multiplied. This demographic shift was not instantaneous. It unfolded over tens of thousands of years, but it began with a moment, a first contact, a decision to fight, to flee, or to resist. From that point on, the future of humanity would belong to only one of them. Part 2. The body and the terms of survival. At a glance, Neanderthals and Homo sapiens appear similar. Both walked upright, crafted tools, controlled fire, and lived in groups. But beneath the surface, within the structure of the body and the architecture of the brain, lay differences that would shape their evolutionary fates. Neanderthals were short, stocky, and powerfully built. Their bodies were optimized for cold endurance. Sloped foreheads, wide nasal cavities, pronounced brow ridges, and strong jawlines characterized their appearance. This anatomical configuration helped conserve heat, improve oxygen intake, and survive in Ice Age Europe. In contrast, Homo sapiens were taller, leaner, with long limbs and lighter frames. Built for endurance running and long-distance travel, their physiology reflected a species designed for movement, adaptability, and rapid response to environmental change. While both species had comparable brain volumes, averaging around 1,300 to 1,500 cubic centimeters, the internal configuration and developmental trajectories of their brains told a different story. One critical area was the cerebellum. In Homo sapiens, the cerebellum, responsible for coordinating movement, processing memory, language, and complex social interaction, was proportionally more developed. This region contributed not only to physical agility, but to cognitive flexibility. It enhanced symbolic thinking, imagination, and the ability to manage relationships within large social networks. Neanderthals may have lacked this same level of neurological specialization. Their cognition was suited to immediate survival, physical precision, and intimate familiar group dynamics. But in situations demanding flexible cooperation, abstract planning, or rapid cultural adaptation, they were at a disadvantage. In evolutionary terms, strength alone was not enough. Muscle did not guarantee dominance. The key variable was coordination, mental, social, and tactical. A species that could plan ahead, divide labor, and build scalable alliances held the edge. When Homo sapiens encountered Neanderthals, they weren't just meeting a rival species. They were meeting a system built for another world, one that had succeeded for hundreds of thousands of years, but was suddenly confronted by a competitor wired for complexity. They may have looked into each other's eyes and seen recognition, but not understanding. The structure of the brain determined more than thought. It shaped how each species perceived the world, processed threat, and built community. The outcome wasn't determined in a single battle or event. It unfolded through thousands of interactions, some peaceful, some violent, some ambivalent, where cognition, not just confrontation, determined survival. The brain, not the spear, became the decisive weapon, and in this long contest for Earth's future, it was not the stronger body, but the more adaptable mind that prevailed. Part 3. The power of organized tribes. Organization was a defining factor. Neanderthals lived in small, tightly knit groups, likely extended families, numbering between 10 and 20 individuals. These groups hunted together, shared food, and cared for injured or elderly members. Their social bonds were intimate, rooted in familiarity and direct connection. Homo sapiens operated on a different scale. They had the ability to unite dozens or even hundreds of individuals under a shared purpose. Their communities extended beyond kinship. They built symbolic systems, practiced rituals, and told stories that turned strangers into collaborators. This capacity to cooperate beyond bloodlines created scalable groups. It enabled division of labor, the establishment of shared goals, and long-term planning. These were not isolated bands. They were flexible social networks, capable of adapting to changing environments and internal challenges. In hunting, this made a measurable difference. Homo sapiens organized large-scale drives. They coordinated movements to trap herds, driving animals into pits, ravines, or ambush points. Success required timing, communication, and trust between individuals who may not have known each other personally. In conflict, this advantage was magnified. Homo sapiens launched coordinated attacks, approaching from multiple angles, distributing roles: scouts, defenders, attackers. Strategy, not brute force, became the dominant factor. A tribe was not merely a cluster of people, it was a system. Neanderthals, despite their physical strength and local knowledge, did not match this level of organizational complexity. Their smaller groups limited their reach, their flexibility, and their ability to respond to threats with the same cohesion. Their strength lay in resilience. Homo sapiens relied on scale and structure. Anthropological evidence supports this contrast. Sapien sites show patterns of group labor, mass butchering, shared hearths, and distributed toolmaking. Symbolic artifacts suggest a shared cultural identity that helped regulate behavior and mediate conflict within large groups. Such systems reduce internal friction and increase external effectiveness. This didn't make Homo sapiens morally superior, but it made them more capable of expanding, defending territory, and overwhelming competitors through numbers and coordination. In evolutionary terms, individual ability mattered, but collective behavior determined outcomes. Neanderthals may have won individual encounters, but Homo sapiens won the long game, not because they were stronger, but because they were better at being many. Survival favored those who could form alliances, manage complexity, and act as a unified body. In the competition for territory, resources, and future generations, the tribe, not the warrior, was the decisive force. Part 4. The Stone Age Arms Race. The difference between a thrown spear and a launched spear may seem minor, but in prehistoric conflict, it marked the boundary between survival and extinction. Neanderthals used thrusting spears, stone tools, wooden clubs. Their weapons were effective at close range, where physical strength and precision determined the outcome. They were face-to-face hunters and fighters, relying on direct engagement. Homo sapiens introduced a different approach: distance. With the invention of the spear thrower, known as the atlatl, they extended their reach. The atlatl was a simple lever, amplifying the power of a human arm. It allowed a projectile to travel farther, faster, and with greater force. This transformed the dynamics of hunting and combat. From a safe distance, Homo sapiens could strike prey before it sensed danger. In battle, this meant attacking before the enemy could close the gap. Range became protection. Accuracy became power. The atlatl didn't just improve survival, it redefined it. This wasn't the only innovation. Homo sapiens experimented with materials and methods. They sharpened stone into finer points, bound blades with resin, combined bone and antler into compound tools. Adhesives made from tree sap reinforced spearheads. Specialized flaking techniques produced sharper, more durable edges. Neanderthals adapted to their environment with remarkable skill. They were resourceful, resilient, and inventive within known parameters, but Homo sapiens pursued refinement. Their tools weren't just functional, they were optimized. Archaeological sites reveal stark contrasts. Neanderthal toolkits remained relatively stable over tens of thousands of years, shaped by local materials and immediate needs. Sapiens tools evolved rapidly, diversified, and spread across regions. Knowledge was not just used, it was transmitted, copied, and improved. In conflict, this meant more than just better weapons. It meant preparation, experimentation, and foresight. Homo sapiens could plan for different terrains, anticipate opposition, and equip themselves accordingly. In the long run, the ability to innovate consistently and collectively was a strategic advantage. Where Neanderthals fought with what they had, Homo sapiens fought with what they could invent. Technology in this context was not about progress for its own sake. It was about efficiency, safety, and survival. And in the unforgiving world of the Pleistocene, even a slight edge in weaponry could determine which species would rule and which would disappear. Part 5. When hunger ended a species. Survival depended on food, and when the climate shifted, only those who adapted quickly could continue. Neanderthals followed a narrow dietary path. Their nutrition was heavily meat-based. Some groups specialized in hunting reindeer, others focused on fish or shellfish. Their survival strategies were closely tied to specific ecosystems. This specialization worked until those ecosystems changed. As the Ice Age climate fluctuated, animal populations migrated, declined, or disappeared. For a species dependent on a limited range of prey, this spelled crisis. When the herds moved, so did the food supply. Neanderthal groups, isolated and inflexible, struggled to keep pace. Homo sapiens followed a different strategy: diversification. Their diets included plants, fruits, tubers, seeds, insects, and animals. They adjusted to seasonal availability and local environments. When meat was scarce, they dug up roots. When plants were limited, they foraged for grubs and cooked bark. Cooking itself was a crucial advancement. Evidence of widespread hearths and fire use among Homo sapiens shows a deliberate effort to extract more energy from food. Boiling, roasting, and fermenting made previously inedible materials digestible. Nutritional versatility became a survival mechanism. For Neanderthal children, a migrating reindeer herd could mean starvation. For Homo sapiens children, nourishment came from a wider range of sources: roasted grasses, boiled bark, cooked larvae. This resilience was not accidental, it was strategic. The archaeological record confirms these contrasts. Isotope analysis of Neanderthal bones shows a strong reliance on large herbivores. By contrast, remains from early Homo sapiens show a mix of plant and animal sources, varying across geography and time. Flexibility in diet extended beyond biology. It influenced movement, settlement, and social cooperation. Groups that could rely on multiple food sources were more mobile, more adaptable, and more likely to survive long periods of scarcity. Adaptation meant more than innovation. It meant expanding the definition of food. Homo sapiens redefined what could be consumed, processed, and shared. That creativity fed more than stomachs, it sustained populations. In an Ice Age landscape, where every calorie mattered. This difference was decisive. A species that could only survive in one way faced extinction when that way failed. A species that could improvise, substitute, and evolve persisted. Neanderthals were efficient hunters, but Homo sapiens were opportunistic omnivores, and in the evolutionary contest of endurance, the more adaptable appetite prevailed. Part 6. A blended bloodline. The encounter between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals was not defined solely by conflict. At times, it was marked by connection. Today, nearly 2 billion people carry fragments of Neanderthal DNA. These genetic traces are not incidental. They are evidence of interbreeding between two human species that once shared territory, resources, and, occasionally, intimacy. Despite anatomical and behavioral differences, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals were biologically compatible. They could mate and produce offspring. These children were hybrids, carriers of mixed traits, drawn from both evolutionary paths. Some of these hybrid individuals may have been vulnerable, affected by mismatched genetics or environmental pressures. But others likely inherited advantages, enhanced immune responses, stronger bodies, or adaptive cognitive traits. These combinations were not uniform, but they were significant. Genetic studies reveal that segments of Neanderthal DNA persist in the genomes of modern non-African populations. These segments influence aspects of immunity, metabolism, and even brain development. They are silent witnesses of a forgotten past, biological memories passed through generations. This blending of lineages complicates the narrative of extinction. Neanderthals did not vanish without a trace. Part of their legacy survived, not in artifacts or ruins, but in the cells of living humans. The story is not one of simple conquest. It is also a story of absorption. As Homo sapiens expanded, they did not always replace Neanderthals. In some regions, they joined them, temporarily, imperfectly, but enough to ensure that traces of Neanderthal life would continue. This genetic inheritance challenges the notion of clear boundaries between species. It suggests a shared humanity, fractured, divergent, but never completely separate. Neanderthals may have disappeared as a distinct population, but they remain, in part, within us. Their genes shape our bodies, influence our responses to disease, and remind us that history is not only written in bones, but also encoded in blood. Part 7. Neanderthals did not surrender. Neanderthals did not fade quietly into extinction. Archaeological evidence reveals a different picture, one of resistance, survival, and struggle. Skeletal remains tell the story. Many Neanderthal bones show trauma from weapons crafted by Homo sapiens, deep cuts from sharpened stone blades, crushing injuries consistent with blunt force impact, puncture wounds from spears. These were not accidents. They were acts of violence in moments of confrontation. But the violence was not one-sided. Remains of Homo sapiens have also been found bearing signs of fatal encounters, some killed by Neanderthals. In certain contexts, human bones bear cut marks and signs of marrow extraction, suggesting episodes of cannibalism. These acts were not ritual. They were desperate responses to starvation and siege. This was not savagery. It was survival under extreme pressure. During harsh winters, in ice-covered forests and frozen valleys, food scarcity forced hard choices. Whether Homo sapiens or Neanderthal, humans did what they had to do to endure. Beyond conflict, Neanderthals left traces of humanity, clear, deliberate, and deeply moving. They buried their dead. In some cases, graves show signs of careful placement, possibly with symbolic items. This suggests an understanding of loss and remembrance. They cared for the wounded. Fossil records include individuals who lived years after sustaining injuries that would have made them dependent on others, such as broken bones or severe arthritis. This care required effort, patience, and compassion. They understood medicine. Botanical residues found on Neanderthal teeth suggest the use of medicinal plants. Natural antibiotics, painkillers, and anti-inflammatories. These were not random choices. They indicate knowledge of the healing properties of specific herbs. These behaviors reveal something fundamental. Neanderthals were not brutes. They were intelligent, social, and emotionally complex. They were parents, partners, and providers. Their lives were hard, but not without meaning or structure. They did not simply vanish. They resisted, fiercely and intelligently. They fought for territory, for food, and for their families. And even as Homo sapiens expanded, Neanderthals endured for thousands of years, holding on in isolated regions, adapting as best they could. Their eventual disappearance was not due to weakness. It was the result of converging pressures, climate shifts, competition, and time. But until the very end, Neanderthals remained present, active, and defiant. Their story is not just one of loss. It is a testament to resilience. They faced extinction not passively, but with determination. And in that final struggle, they proved something essential. They were human in every way that mattered. Part 8. No one won. Neanderthals disappeared. Homo sapiens survived. But survival is not the same as victory. Their extinction was likely caused by a mix of factors: new diseases carried by sapiens, harsh climate shifts from volcanic eruptions, and demographic pressure from faster-growing, more adaptable human groups. This was no sudden collapse, but a slow decline over thousands of years, as Neanderthals were pushed into smaller, harsher territories until recovery was impossible. Their loss was not a triumph for us, but the end of a branch of humanity. With them vanished unique languages, traditions, and ways of life. We remained not because we were better in every way, but because we adapted in a few key ones. Yet Neanderthals are not entirely gone. Millions today carry fragments of their DNA, influencing our biology. Their story leaves a lasting lesson. Strength without adaptability is fragile, and intelligence without cooperation falls short. In the end, no one truly won. One species vanished, another endured, and the world we live in was shaped by both.